Begin with the finder this morning. It says no excuse to be poor. President Nana Akufo-Addo rallies Ghanaians for speedy progress. That's the front page of the finder. Also here, Ouattara Sirleaf Lord Ghanaians. And Akufo-Addo really means business, Kufo. And Parliament worried over high attrition rate. Those are stories on the finder newspaper. The Daily Graphic, presidential inauguration momentous as Nana Akufo-Addo takes office, says he will protect public purse. The Ghanaian Times has the same story and says Nana takes office, comes with a photograph of him and his vice, Dr. Bawumia, there. Colorful scenes there. And then the Statesman said, we have no reason to be poor. President Akufo-Addo vows to protect public purse. Also on the Daily Statesman, Ouattara to Ghanaians support Akufo-Addo to succeed, and the Speaker of Parliament assures I will be fair to both sides. And a lot of the stories from the inauguration. Gold Street Business says Ghana ready for business again, President. And skills development high on government agenda. The Independent says a new dawn for Ghana. And African leaders commend Mahama's statesmanship. These are the stories that are on the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Daily Guide comes again and says that Nana takes over as fifth president. All hail President Akufo-Addo. Great photograph here, and that of the vice president and the chief justice also here. The vice president also taking the oath of office and allegiance. Those are the stories here. My guest this morning, a member of the NDC's communication team, a legal practitioner, Abraham Amaliba. Good morning and happy New Year.
Same to you.
Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
And then another legal practitioner, member of Parliament for the Futu constituency, a member of the NPP, Alexander Afenyo-Markin. Good morning to you.
Good morning,
and thanks so much for joining us. You have been here in 2017 already. And in any case, happy New Year once more. All right, so let's start with the colorful scenes that were captured at the Independence Square in Accra. A lot of excitement, a great weekend for Ghana. Ghana caught the attention of the world, and all eyes were at the Independence Square on, and Ghana swearing in the fifth president of the Fourth Republic. And of course, the key thing to take a look at is the speech of the president. Now, let's start from here, Mr. Amaliba. To begin with you, one key thing that is beginning to attract commentary is the president's admonition that he will protect the public purse. Now, how deep is this as far as ensuring that we protect the resources of the country is concerned?
Well, let me start by saying good morning to your viewers. Yes, Saturday was one great day in which our democracy was once again a showpiece to the international community. It was a day that we showed to the whole world that as a nation we've come of age and we are capable of taking our own destiny into our hands. And so it was not surprising that you had a situation where there was smooth transfer of power, which is reminiscent of the previous handovers. This is not the first time that Ghana has chalked this feat. Indeed, there's a joke that in Uganda, a teacher asked his students to define democracy, and they said Ghana. So Ghana is now synonymous to democratic practice all over the world. If you hear Ghana, then you know it's about democracy. And so I take what was said at the inauguration of the president as once again Ghana's commitment to protecting the public purse. If you look at all the speeches of the previous presidents, from Rawlings and the Fourth Republic, through to Professor Mills, through to Kufuor, through Mills, and then to Mahama, it is clear that protecting the public purse has always been key. And you remember the mantra, zero tolerance for corruption. And you also remember that of Professor Mills when he said that there's going to be austere measures. And you also remember Mahama saying that we would put shine on corrupt practices. And so Nana Akufo-Addo making the point that he was going to protect the public purse is in consonance, in keeping with what all our head of states have said, our previous presidents have indicated. And so for me, the way is now clear for us to begin to see how he will put this into practice. We want to see how Nana Akufo-Addo, now president, would practicalize some of the things he said in his speech. And that for me is what is important, and not the mantra and not the usual sayings that I will protect the public purse. It is now left for him to practicalize that saying. And I think that that is what is important, and not the inaugural speech. We cannot discuss this without discussing the fallouts of the inaugural speech. And one will begin to wonder even if these speeches that he made on Saturday were actually his vision, because we've heard of the row, the plagiarism row, where he has been accused of lifting speeches from other presidents in their inaugural addresses. I just think that that sort of put a dampener on the Saturday activity. For very wrong reasons, we are, at the moment, the spotlight is on us as a nation. You listen to BBC, I have even read a news article from Kenya, which sought to say that our president plagiarized some former American presidents. Not just one, if it were even one could have said that it's a mistake, not two. I'm even told that apart from Bush, apart from Clinton, JF Kennedy, some have even extended it to other African leaders. So the question now is that entire speech that of Nana Akufo-Addo? Is it the case that one can comfortably say that probably these are inaugural speeches of former presidents all over the world put together and made his speech? These are questions that one will begin to ask. And I think that it's embarrassing what happened on Saturday, not just to he as a person, but to the presidency and to the whole nation at large. I remember vividly when Professor Mills mispronounced a word, economy, and said economy. In fact, a lot of the MPP supporters had his voice as ringtones, just showing how embarrassing it is for a former president to have said that. I remember last year when the brochure issue came up, where there were errors in the program lineup, where we designated the Kenyan president as our president. I had a lot of hue and uproar. And so I think that we should also treat, and I'm surprised that the whole of the newspapers that you have read have not brought that as an issue on the front burner for us to discuss it. Because
isn't that big? Once the presidency has accepted responsibility and apologized, you think that we should not move on?
I think that as a nation, we will have to comment on it. I reserve the right to comment on it and say that never again should this happen. I do not think that the way we are treating it, where the newspapers have not even mentioned it, is the right thing to do. Just as we condemn previous blunders, I think that the same spotlight should be showed on this same issue. I think it is a dampener in the sense that we cannot even understand how come that our president could not put out his own vision, but rather had to take other people's vision and put them together and sell to the people of Ghana.
I see.
And I think that this is very, very embarrassing, and we must all condemn it. Yes, I acknowledge that the press secretary has come out to apologize, but The question is, did we need to wait for an uproar before he comes out to apologize, or that he, as part of those who are responsible for the president's speech, could have been proactive to see it before? And I think that they failed the people of this country, and that must be told in no uncertain terms.
Alex, some have said it was a wonderful speech, and listening to the president quite exciting. Now, did this plagiarism thing take away anything from the speech?
Well, let me say good morning to our viewers out there. I think that it was a beautiful ceremony, well organized, and Mr. President once again demonstrated his readiness to take over as a new president. The eloquence with which he delivered a speech and all the issues he tackled. Very critical of these was his commitment in protecting the public purse, which I believe all of us in opposition, those of you in the media, were so concerned about the cost of projects and the way government priority was not being properly identified. This is a man who has committed himself to ensuring that we have value for money. He's not only stopped there, he's also even proposing further legislation to fortify such views. The Office of Special Prosecutor is something that is going to come on board, ensuring that the enactment is anchored on Article 88, and then just as we did the EOCO Act, so that there will be that independence of a prosecutor who would take charge of some of these issues without it having any political effect. Now, on the main issue of the speech, look, Mr. President had quoted former president.
Right.
He quoted Nkrumah and acknowledged that. He quoted J.B. Dankwa, a patriot, a freedom fighter, a nationalist who fought for our independence and gave our name Ghana. He quoted him and accordingly acknowledged. He quoted Buzia, Professor Buzia, the Prime Minister of this Republic, and acknowledging. Now, in some of these speeches, it is always, it wouldn't be unheard of to say that maybe, yes, there was a slip. The presidency has come out to say that, look, yes, we acknowledge that. Sometimes somebody may have it in a footnote. But the fact that without any debate, says, oh, the event was on Saturday. Sunday, okay, this line could have also been as said by the President of America, George Bush, etc. I hold this view that we must be citizens and not spectators. The man says, look, in a sign of humility, I acknowledge, I apologize. He did not only just acknowledge that this was an error, an apology has also been rendered. It doesn't take the shine away. It doesn't take the beauty away. It should rather draw the attention of our friends to a new day in our leadership that admit it where genuinely you err. Admit it where you realize that inadvertently you've made a mistake. They never apologized. They never saw the need to even acknowledge some of these and say, okay, they will yank you off. They will say, oh, we have the power and all that. So I think the president has started on a good note. If you have an issue, that's fine. But let's go further on the call for all of us to act with patriotism and change our attitudes. Yes, a political, sometimes when we talk about changing attitude, everybody seems to focus on the political class. But the political class would come with a vision, an agenda, which is in the 8th manifesto. But when it comes to implementation, it's a collective agenda. You must play your role. The civil servant down there, the public servant down there, the chief director, the driver, the secretary, all of us must work together and have this mentality of protecting the interests of Ghana. Americans do it so beautifully. I've only had a few occasions of visiting the US, but I've met a lot of Americans. And if you see the way they embrace their country, how America is the greatest country on earth, the way they speak about America, anything they do, it is geared towards the future, the interests of the United States. Can we once again, as a people, forget about our partisan interests, their parochial interests, and this issue of division in this country? Somebody is wishing somebody to fail. No. Nana Addo says, this is the time. If we want to succeed, Ghana must first succeed. We cannot talk about Ghana's success when we are not ready to contribute to that success.
Patriotism, where should it start from?
I'm saying that it's collective.
Someone
But
said
leadership, by
from
example,
the ruling class.
they wouldn't be wrong to suggest so. So it comes back to the issue of leadership by example. But the effect of it is that it should be a collective effort. If the leader is leading by example, if the political class or if the ruling class are demonstrating that patriotism, but then all others think that it is our pocket first, there will be a problem. So we shouldn't go into that era of blame game again. For instance, the gas explosion that occurred, I'm sure people were making blame games. Some who started, who approved it, whose duty is it? If you go to the police, enforcing the laws, inspecting licenses, if you jump the red light, you've been arrested. If you're a big man, do you get arrested? Do you have are you that responsible enough to obey traffic laws and all that? All these things add up. Building permits, our land tenure system, land administration, how we go about things in the public service, award of contract, and all that. Ghanaian businessmen who get mobilization to execute government jobs, do they do it well? How projects are abandoned here and there and becomes a cost on public purse? Taxes. Sometimes people joke on the street by saying we professionals, lawyers, chartered accountants, other professionals, we don't really contribute in terms of paying taxes. I'm sure they may not be too wrong. Is it a new day where all of us will contribute and contribute properly to the public kitty? So it's an all-inclusive call that we are Ghanaians. And then he strikes another important chord. He says that, look, it's not just about holding a Ghanaian passport. It's not just about having a birth certificate that makes you a Ghanaian. What is the true meaning of the citizenship that we have? We can give values to the citizenship if we participate. So it comes back to the issue of patriotism. Give meaning to it, that if you are Ghanaian, in your heart of hearts, you are proud of the place of your birth.
So this must come from the citizens.
All of us.
What is the government's role in this? Is it just by saying it?
No. The government has a role to lead the way. The government's role, like I've said, lead by example. So to the government, if these are broad measures to ensure that the right things are done, then of course it is expected that ministers, MPs, not only the ruling class, leadership, chief directors. If you are a chief director, for instance, you are in an office, you don't come to work early. How else do you expect people to come to work early? It's not only the ruling class, even opposition. Your comment is good to criticize. I like the way my learned friend has laid out his submissions. Yes, you are criticizing, but at the end of the day, he's not condemning. What he's trying to say is, look, this is my view. Even in opposing government business, or even in opposing the conduct of government officials, you must demonstrate that you yourself, you want the right thing to be done, you wish them well,
Let me ask
and you are looking at the interest of government.
Amaliba. I heard the current government's transitional team say that we're going to forfeit their allowances in order to cut waste. They think that there is too much waste, and so they won't take the allowances, so that they reduce the burden on government, on the government purse. The argument here is that the real waste is when public officials have 4 vehicles in their homes. One is used by the minister, one is used by his nephew, one is used by his house boy or house girl. And these vehicles are seen on weekends working with engines running when there are funerals not directly related to work. According to the argument, this is where the real waste is. Now, how is this government going to cut out all this? Because it is after this that the citizen knows that if the government in power is cutting waste, then I must also contribute to cutting the waste.
Right. You see, we need to broaden this issue and discuss it as a whole so that the effect will be felt. It's not enough to just limit yourself to a minister of state.
Or public officials.
Exactly. The public service, the general waste in the public service must be tackled head on. So I can agree. How many vehicles are you entitled to as a chief director? At least a 4-wheel vehicle for your long distance travel and all that, for trekking. And I'm even sure that that would have to be in a pool, not one you are officially entitled to. But for the saloon vehicle, which will be taking you to the offices and all that, that one, it makes a lot of sense. So I don't know what the system is now,
right?
But I don't expect a chief director or a director to have more than 2 vehicles assigned to him or her. I don't expect that. If the current practice is that a director or a chief director, a senior official, has more than 2 official vehicles assigned, then I think that is something that ought to be reviewed. Also, for ministers of state, I'm not too sure. I'm not a minister of state, but I'm looking at my friends who were in government. I don't think they had more than 2 official vehicles assigned to them. At least for somebody who is a member of parliament, you have a car loan, which you would have your vehicle, and maybe as a minister there may be a vehicle available for your use. And most of the times I saw them using 4-wheel drive. Now, somebody could suggest that, well, if you are driving a 4-wheel drive you have a 4-wheel drive in Accra, using that for your official work, the costs in terms of fuel is such that, well, you can reduce it by having a saloon car in Accra. But certainly, if you are traveling, a minister is traveling out of Accra, it is not expected that saloon car would be used. There should be a 4-wheel available. These are matters that can be discussed or ought to be discussed. Cutting down on costs of doing government business or reducing waste is not just a one-way affair. It should cut across. And I'm sure that once there's a government policy to deal with it, there shouldn't be a problem. But Bright, there's also an underlying. There's also an underlying factor: the cooperation of all. If the populace or those in charge do not cooperate, then there will be a problem.
As in the public officers?
Of course. I mean, we need the cooperation of everybody. If the boss is giving a directive and down there somebody is not cooperating, somebody is going to a funeral with a state vehicle,
a green number plate,
and the boss is not aware, because look, we don't want to respect the law.
To have been parked at the office,
exactly, right? And somebody is doing it anyhow, then there will be a problem. Then no matter how you would want to ensure the right thing being done, people down there would want to do it anyhow. And when you want to crack the whip, people will start playing the victim card. So no more playing of victim card. Let's cooperate. Let's ensure that if you want a better life, the state must first be rich. If the state is rich, if the state has enough resources, the state is able to take care of those of us in the vulnerable class, then those who are in the business class can create the wealth for the wealth to be spread.
I'm grateful. Mr. Amaliba, the issue of patriotism, some have argued that should start from the top, because it is when the people see leadership, for instance, not waiting until it is 30 minutes to their meetings and then they jump red lights with their hazards on, the people would also obey the rules and regulations on the ground. But as long as they don't do it, the people will also not do exactly what they have to according to the law. So how do we go by it?
My bride, I'm surprised at this new found call for patriotism. I wonder if we just discovered the word patriotism. See, we were in this country when they were in opposition. The sort of things they did, the sort of agitations, the sort of condemnation, the sort of wishes they had for the NDC government. Indeed, at a point in time, Dumso was like manna from heaven falling down to them, because they persisted in their claim that Dumso will never go, and we are going to continue to be in Dumso, wishing that the NDC fails. I am shocked to my bone marrow to hear Afenyo today sitting and telling me, preaching to me to be patriotic. And I ask the question, since when did we discover that as a nation? Is it just when Nana Akufo-Addo was inaugurated on Saturday that we found that word patriotism, or that this word patriotism used to be there, but that we never practiced it? I am shocked. But it is good that when the shoe is on the other foot, because you are not the one wearing it, you don't know where it pinches most. Now that the shoe is on the other foot, I'm sure they now know how it is to want to carry all of us along, and that they need the support of all of us. I would re-echo President Mohammed's point on patriotism. And he eloquently made the point that we as a nation and as Ghanaians should give our support to Nana Akufo-Addo for him to run his lap of the race. That's what the President Mohammed made the point. That's what he indicated. And so, if it is about patriotism, I think that the NDC has no difficulty at all in supporting the government of the day, in supporting Nana Akufo-Addo. We would be constructive in our criticisms where the interest of the nation coincides with what they are doing. We will support it. But where they are in variance with the expectation of the people of Ghana, we would criticize and then we will hold them accountable. That's the kind of position we want to give. We don't want to give an opposition that is disruptive, that is acrimonious. Such opposition we've seen before. And as we move forward, we are going to exhibit an opposition that will be responsible and would be able to say that we are with the people on this, and that we need to support the government of the day. But your question is critical, is key. Where does it start? I think that it starts with the leadership. It starts with the leadership because the citizenry looks up to the leaders. And when they see that the leader is doing what is right, naturally, they would emulate what their leaders are doing. But if they see that a government official, rather than driving on the right side of the road, is rather driving the opposite side and blaring his siren, it also tells the people that this can be done. Naturally, the Ghanaian is law-abiding. And that is why we have no difficulty when we go to other countries, because we are able to, as it were, adjust to the situation, because naturally we are law-abiding. It is because we do not enforce our laws It is because we pay lip services to our laws, and because there is this attitude of the Ghanaian who, whenever he's arrested, will be looking out for a big man somewhere to intervene on his behalf. If, as a people and as leaders, we begin to say that let's allow the security agencies to do their work, let not somebody from Afenyo-Markin's constituency call him and say, look, a policeman has arrested me in Winneba. Can you talk to this policeman so that I'll go? If we begin to say that, look, we will not countenance some of these things, I am sure that this newfound love for patriotism will be imbibed in the people of this country. But I think that patriotism has been a word, has been a value since time immemorial. But our opponents are saying that we are now discovering it. We will agree, we will discover it. But we think that we shall still hold them accountable and in check when they go wrong.
I see.
Okay.
Afenyo, did you just discover the word?
Right. There's a difference between
The old word and the new word?
No. There's a difference between they telling us in government that we're going to be constructive in our criticism. And we making a call on Ghanaians to be patriotic so that together we can build this nation. Now, he tells the whole world this morning that perhaps the MPP in opposition wasn't patriotic enough. This is the inference he makes.
From the way you dealt with the Dumsor
Don't
issue.
worry. I will give him a few examples to prove him wrong. On the issue of Dumsor, in Parliament, the opposition or the minority cooperated with the government in most of the power purchase agreements they brought for consideration. To the extent that the controversial car power agreement, which we felt that they had not done due diligence enough, it was too expensive, we raised the red flag. But you know the attitude of the then government, they will not listen to you. In fact, you tell them, they say, go to court. They will not, and they bulldoze their way. And we all knew their attitude in this country. Who stood in their way from the opposition? We gave them the best of cooperation. Car power, we're always asking them, bring this, to the extent that we had to even go to court for interpretation. On the issue of CDB, didn't we support them when they brought the CDB loan? To the extent that we labored all night to read the agreement and discovered that aspect of the agreement was not beneficial to the national interest, especially where the Chinese financiers were saying that if we did not put our house, if we did not have all the necessary documents in place to draw the funds, we're going to pay penalties. We told them that if you don't look at this aspect, it's going to be a loss to the state. It's going to cost Ghana. They will not listen. Eventually, it took the same opposition to make noise for them to bring the agreement to Parliament for capping, by which time they had spent over $200 million free money to the Chinese, when that, oh, we are giving you a loan. If you don't meet this requirement, you are going to pay penalty, 20 million, 10 million, and they kept paying. The two of us, you in government and those of us in opposition, who was more patriotic? We were. So I don't want us to go into that argument of blame game. When they were going for 200 million Ghana cedi for SADA, we told them that it's a good initiative. You have SADA, the law is there. But we are saying, our contention is that bring this to Parliament. They refused to bring it to Parliament, by the way. Eventually, they procured the facility. And when we looked at it, it was at a compound interest. How do you procure a loan? Within 3 years, you are going to pay interest of 99 million. And true to it, they procured the facility November 2012. In 2015, the facility had matured. They paid 299 million. Within 3 years, we criticized you and said, look, come on, really look at this. It's too expensive. You are in government. We are in opposition. If you say that it's a newfound word of patriotism, I would say that patriotism has been part of the values of the MPP. if you want to look at it politically. That is how come we were able to draw your attention that it was too expensive. Protect the public purse. You didn't listen to us. So now that we have the opportunity as a party in government, we are re-echoing, we are reiterating this position of ours, which we at least attempted getting you to buy into. If you had bought into our views, you wouldn't have procured a facility at that compound interest where only within 3 years you were going to pay 99 million on the 200 million. And you paid from the taxpayers' coffers. And then you went back to the IMF to ask for money when you had again paid $200 million to the Chinese for no money given to you merely because you had not met pre-disbursement requirement. So he shouldn't go into that area that we have just found a new word, patriotism. No. If all of us act collectively, if all of us minimize the cost of doing government business, if we don't go and fix aeronautical lights and do extend runway without any other infrastructure, we come back and say $29 million. And we are able to really treat the Ghanaian purse as our own private purse, I am sure we can get somewhere. Obviously, once we look at all these things, even if you don't get rid of everything, you would have reduced it to an appreciable level for people to see that, hey, there's a new era. So that is all about the call.
Okay.
But if they want to turn, can you? All right, Abraham,
you don't learn lessons. Your own Akufo-Addo, as he then was, Akufo-Addo had his hands bent when he said that the Kaswa interchange was inflated.
Abraham,
you know that.
Let me right.
He had his hands bent, fingers bent.
Right.
The Rich Hospital, when they said it was inflated, the Crown agencies came out to debunk that. So you keep on putting these lies into the minds of people. You see,
if you want to bring Kaswa interchange,
let me tell you something.
No.
Let me tell you something.
Let's have a smooth debate.
Finally,
these interjections, I think it will spoil the beauty of it. No, I had not.
Okay,
I had not.
okay,
Yes, I allowed you to speak. I mean, at least you see, he's brought the Kaswa interchange.
You see, no.
You brought it. Let me finish. I will finish. No, don't worry. I need to
finish. So finish what you are.
No, don't worry. Once you brought it in, right.
Your own
let me.
Minister, member of Parliament.
Yes. Hold on. Right. The NDC, then in government, wasn't so fair to Nanado. The Kaswa interchange, I seconded the motion on the floor of the House. We sat at the conference center. The concerns that Nanado later repeated were raised by me on the floor of the House. The concerns that Nanado expressed were very legitimate, but our people, our friends, spin it. Let me explain to you. Honorable Ediomi, no, yes, but we need to. Honorable Ediomi and his team were not part of the finance committee. They had been shown a document which talked about 130 million being the cost of the project. And when Joy FM interviewed him, they interviewed him on the $130 million. What came to finance committee was $160 million.
So certainly there was
exactly, and I later discussed that with him. That look, Honorable Ediomi, what we were debating, what Nanado was talking about was 160 million. But you see, the NDC would not want that truth to be told. So if you are bringing Kaswa interchange, the records of Parliament are very clear. I seconded it. I raised the concerns of the minority that how could you give a figure of 130 million to the Roads and Transport Committee and say that this is the cost of doing the project. You go to the financier to procure a loan, you now increase the cost to 160 and you are going to borrow 172 million and paying 10% of the lender's insurance cost, and at the same time you were supposed to deposit another 30% in a collection account at New York. So in effect, you say the cost of the project is 160 million. If you put aside all these monies, would you even have enough money to do it? So let's argue properly. Rather than saying that Nanado goved and Nanado did this, he did not. And Adiomi did not disagree with Nanado, except that they gave different figures. That is the truth.
Alex, I'm grateful.
Right, you see, we have moved
let's
away
wrap
from
up.
the
Yes.
campaign.
But that is what you brought.
You see, we've moved away from campaign.
We are not
you are now
campaigning.
to govern.
Yes,
The
so that is
people
why
are
we have.
expecting you to deliver.
Yes.
And so, this issue of Nanado got it wrong, he didn't get
but
it
you
wrong.
introduced
I'm
it.
telling you that you should not have gone into campaign matters. You inflated this, you inflated that, and that's why I told you
No,
that.
no, no, no.
I told you that.
No, you were talking about the patriotism, and I situated it
Even Nanado
properly.
had it wrong for the rich hospital. He had it wrong for the diaries, the printing of the diaries. And so you have sown in the minds of Ghanaians that we are a corrupt people. And so you should now come and rule. Now rule. But I am telling you, the people are holding you accountable. From today onwards, they will begin to ask. The DKM, they will begin to ask. They want their monies. The $1 million you've asked, they are waiting for them at the constituencies. So these are the things that people are expecting, and not
let's jump
and not matters related
let
to
me
elections.
jump
Again.
to the Ghanaian Times this morning. Alex, let's move. I have just about a few. Let's move on. The Ghanaian Times this morning talks about Speaker cautions NPP MPs against what he calls ultra-majoritarianism. And the finder is talking about the high attrition rate in Parliament. Let's tie the two in wrapping up our conversation this morning. Now, Mr. Amaliba, let's start from here. The Speaker is warning to the NPP side. He calls it ultra-majoritarianism. That's a huge word, and it's simply the tyranny of the majority. And he says that he's cautioning the NPP MPs against it, suggesting that it's a dangerous thing, and if Parliament is to develop, then the NPP MPs should stay away from using their powers to intimidate the minority.
Well, I'm happy it's coming from him because he's going to steer affairs. He is going to be the arbiter in the House. So if it's coming from him, it's refreshing because he will then know how to ensure that the views of the minority are not, as it were, shrouded in some part of the Parliament. And we need to understand that much as they have the majority, there are also some views of the minority that can help the majority to, as it were, govern this country. You will notice that this is the first time we are having such a huge majority overshadowing the minority
171 to 104.
by 60-something. Yes. Apart from the first Parliament where they boycotted it and we had majority NDC and about 3 or 4 independent persons. Hawa Yakubu was part of the independent persons. So we are now faced with a situation where the majority would have a larger number of people and would not need the cooperation of the minority in most cases. How are we going to ensure that the majority does not overrun the country in terms of the governance of this country? And that even if they are to govern by their numbers, they will do that in the larger interest of the Ghanaian people. This is where civil society organizations must wake up and also support the minority. Because numbers alone in Parliament is not enough to check the majoritarian rule. And so civil society are now also being called upon, based on what we have, to augment the minorities' views in Parliament, so that we don't have a situation where the majority would have their say and also have their way without anybody putting them in check. But once it's coming from the Speaker of Parliament, I am sure he's conscious of this fact and would administer the House in such a way as to ensure that the minority are also given a voice and that their views will also be carried out. In the absence of that, then you may be having demonstrations because Parliament will not be effective, and you have civil society also going on demonstrations and all this. We do not want these things to happen. We are of the view that Parliament, being masters of their own rules, will be able to, put in place that mechanism which will ensure that the minority is not overrun by the sheer numbers of the majority.
Do you see the minority working out? In some instances, we remember the RUPAL, the Representation of the People's Law, the NHIS issue, where minority then walked out in these instances. If they feel not being listened to.
Let me be honest with you. It crossed my mind some few days ago that we are likely to see walkouts. But again, you notice that because they have sheer numbers, walkouts will not bother them. They have the numbers. And so, how do we balance the walkouts in such a way that when we walk out and come out of Parliament, the Ghanaian people will be on our side? That is how we should be looking at the walkouts. The walkouts should be such that if we are unable to get our views across in Parliament and we come out, we will have the Ghanaian people supporting us. We shouldn't just make the walkouts constant. It should be used sparingly. And in the few occasions that we are going to use it, that is my proposal, it should be such that when we come out, the Ghanaian population, the Ghanaian people will be behind us. And that is where they will begin to shake. But if it's just mere walkouts and constantly walking out, it will lose its effect. Anyway, walkouts are part of the parliamentary processes. But I am saying that in this occasion, in this instance, where they have sheer numbers, let's ensure that we use the walkouts sparingly, but when we walk out,
it should be effective.
It should be effective to have the support of the people behind us.
All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Afenyo-Markin, majoritarianism, that is Speaker's worry because of the size of the numbers that you have.
Well, Mr. Speaker cautioned against the tyranny of the majority, and at the same time called on the minority to act with responsibility. So it's a double-edged sword issue. So it's not just the majority side by the minority side. But, right, let me say that my 4 years in Parliament on the minority bench gave me some experience. And it exposed me to the workings of our legislative politics. Over 90% of the work we do in Parliament are approved by consensus. At committee, we discuss dispassionately. I wish some of our committee discussions or deliberations are brought for public consumption.
Where it matters most, you don't.
I am saying that most issues we agree on consensus.
Which is true. But where it matters most, the House do not agree.
Not necessarily. It depends on the context.
The RTI is a classic example.
We have ideological differences. The RTI, what was the RTI all about?
There's no
the
consensus.
Paper, hold on. There was consensus on it. The paper...
It didn't get passed.
No, if you pick it only from that angle, you get it wrong. It was laid...
The Ghanaian didn't care about it. It's about getting it passed. That's all.
It was laid in October.
We were interested.
It was laid in October. Civil society wanted to make an input, and they were given that opportunity to make the input they needed. Way back, and the bill had to be withdrawn. The Attorney General had to come to the office to Parliament to withdraw. It was not at the instance of the opposition. It was the AG who came to Parliament to withdraw and relayed in October. The issues that the minority raised at the tail end of our tenure was that as the AG, by way of procedure, included the RTI and the stage it had gotten to in her handing over note. That was what raised a controversy. All right? It wasn't that the minority did not want to do it. Neither was it the case that the majority was so eager to do it and we stood in their way. In fact, the concerns that were raised by the then Oseche Mensah Bonsu on the minority side was supported. That view was supported by the then Nadole Kalio MP, Alban Sumani Bagbe, now the second deputy speaker. So there was an agreement on the way forward on the RTI. So let's put that aside.
Wrap up for me.
Yes.
I have run out of
We expect our friends to cooperate. Unfortunately, they are already speculating a walkout.
It's part of the parliamentary.
Well, if they strongly...
You know it is part of...
Oh, I'm saying that if they strongly disagree...
But this morning, lies cooperation. Since when did you know this, Afenyo? Talking about cooperation.
Is that the way you think? But maybe you have not read the answer.
Okay.
No. Maybe I need to clear perception. Maybe anytime I came out publicly to disagree with the government, I would have raised the matter on the floor, expecting them to give us space. And it was upon such failure that we took a very strong stance. So don't brand me that, Afenyo-Markin or the MPP was always disagreeing. Go and read the answer.
All right.
There was not a single occasion that we came out just to disagree. But we would engage them. Ask your ministers. You ask your ministers.
Right.
The number of times that we have told them that try and work on this. This thing is not all too good. Let's agree on it. But it was when they will yank you off and say that, well, we don't care. We'll do it the way we want to do it. Then it's okay. Then we'll make the public know our views.
Okay.
And this is part of the practice of politics.
Right.
So if I'm calling on you to cooperate on issues, it does not mean that you cannot state your view. It does not mean that I'm trying to cow you. No, that's not the point.
All right.
But Bright, let's find out how much was spent on the cocktail at the Flagstaff House. That's very important. That's the beginning of the accountability.
All right.
That's food for
I am
thought.
grateful. Mr. Abraham Amaliba is a member of the NDC. Alexander Afenyo-Markin is a member of Parliament for Ifutu constituency and a member of the NPP. Gentlemen, great Monday, and sure we'll be seeing you more and more as we go into 2017.